What is love? Lady, the wonders, my heart. What is love?
This guide is going to be on how to play D&D's Bard. This isn't going over the roleplay aspects or anything like that. This is just straight up what the class features are telling you about what you're supposed to be doing in combat, what the core gameplay loop is going to be, and I'm going to give you my perspective as a designer and a few options that you should take or spells you might want to consider while you're playing this sort of hybrid restoration and destruction and support. I mean, Bard can cover a lot of territory with your spell selection. Now, there will be a couple terms I use whenever I'm talking about your zone. This is your position in battle. If I'm talking about your role, this is what you're kind of doing in battle, what your class features are kind of informing that you're supposed to be doing in battle. And then I might talk a little bit about roleplay dynamic. With Bard, most clearly, your roleplay dynamic is most likely going to be a face. Charisma is your main spellcasting ability. It synergizes with all of the face-like skills. But you can build Bard out to be somewhat of a skill monkey. If you just decide you want to go with a more like intelligence skill focused Bard, there's all the potential in the world here for you to do that. There's a few terms I'll be talking about here that I'll just kind of go over briefly, but I have a few videos here on the channel that you can refer to if you have any more questions about that. Your zone, this is going to be your main position in combat. Your role, this is going to be what you're kind of doing in combat. It's sort of a brief summary in a way. And then your roleplay dynamic. This is what you're doing outside of combat and the interaction and exploration pillars of play. The way that I think about your zone is what the lineup of proficiencies and your hit points is giving you. Right here, you get a D8 hit die. This is the average kind of hit die size. This tells me right off the bat, usually if I see a D8 hit die, this is most likely going to be a midliner. You're not really concerned so much about staying as far back in the back as possible. You may want to pop in and out of the front line depending on what your overall playstyle is going to be. With the Bard in particular, if you don't have like proficiency with like medium armor, usually the class is telling you you might want to kind of hang back but stay sort of in this midline if you go with spells like Cure Wounds. Reason being for that, you want to be able to pop in and, make physical contact with somebody to cast Cure Wounds on them. But playing a midliner without a specific disengagement tool, something that you can use usually on a bonus action on your turn to avoid attacks of opportunity, you're probably most likely going to want to stay safe, maybe closer to the back line. With your proficiencies, you're getting light armor proficiency. Weapons, you're getting simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. There is what we call like Gish potential here, being a mix of magic and martial. Tools, you're going to get 3 musical instruments of your choice. These are also going to serve as your spellcasting focus here in a bit. Saving throws, you get dexterity as your strong saving throw and charisma as your weak save. And go check out the Barbarian video if you're curious about what I mean by strong and weak saves. With your skills, Bard is one of the skill monkeys here where you can just kind of pick any 3. With this though, I think people are usually going to pick the face type skills. So we're talking deception, persuasion, maybe intimidation. Performance is kind of another sure, why not? But I do feel like persuasion and deception are going to be most often here. But if you do want to build a Bard to go with maybe a more historian or specifically researching Arcana because you really want to lean into the magical secrets flair of the Bard, those are totally an option for you to take. Equipment. You start with the following equipment. You can choose between a rapier, a longsword, or any simple weapon. You can get a diplomat's pack or an entertainer's pack. You can get a lute or any other musical instrument, and then you always get leather armor and a dagger. So with the leather armor and the D8 hit die, this is another thing that's informing this is most likely going to be a midliner. There are some bards that aren't quite as scared at staying up in the front. Most specifically, you can think of swords or valor are the typical we're going to point towards those if you're looking for a Gish. Difference between the two mostly being that swords is more of an offensive Gish, Valor is more of the support sort of defensive Gish. With their spellcasting feature, you're going to be a charisma caster with full spellcasting progression, as well as a few features that you get along the way that make it to where their spell list is essentially any spell you want to get in the game with a little bit of restriction. Cantrips, you're going to get the 2 cantrips of your choice from the Bard spell list. You're going to get additional cantrips as you keep leveling up, and also note that you can pick cantrips with your magical secrets feature later on. You get a standard lineup of full casting progression here. Your spells known to 1st level or higher, you're going to know 4 1st level spells of your choice from the Bard spell list, and then you'll learn additional spells as you keep leveling up. I will make mention of a few spells on here. Number one, ones that you should pick up. Number two, some that you should probably ignore because they're a bit of a trap pick. Friends, you think it should be a really great kind of social face cantrip. It gives you advantage on these charisma checks for a minute, and then afterwards, the creature is aware that like you tried to influence it with a spell, and it may become hostile. Well, it says it becomes hostile to you. So yeah, this one's also requiring your concentration and only lasts for a minute. I have seen people come up with clever ways to use this cantrip. Go for it if that's the kind of thing that you want to do. But I will say that Friends doesn't, I think for the first time user, it just doesn't really play out, I think, the way that they may have envisioned in their mind. Dancing Lights is a really good pickup, as well as Light if you don't have Dark Vision. Mage Hand is the best. I think the best utility cantrip in the game, possibly only rivaled by a spell like Mold Earth. Mage Hand, you are just getting the Spectral Hand. It can manipulate something up to 10 pounds. This is a really, really fantastic cantrip. Please, please don't overlook this one. Message is another kind of no-duh pickup on the Bard. You're able to whisper this message, and then the target only hears the message and can reply in a whisper that only you can hear, so you're getting a little bit of a walkie-talkie here with this cantrip. Minor Illusion is a cantrip that, in a way, can really outclass several of the other higher-level spells that are within its own spell school. This is one you really shouldn't ignore, you creative players out there that want to make, like, you want to think of cartoony things that you can do to subvert a situation. Minor Illusion can definitely be that. It actually turns out that Prestidigitation is a pretty fantastic interaction cantrip for like just social situations. You want to give people a demonstration of the fact that you are in fact like a pretty powerful spellcaster in a way. I mean, Prestidigitation is just such a cute, fun utility cantrip. Thunderclap is a pretty okay damaging cantrip. It does have a range of 5 feet, but if you're surrounded, this gets just markedly better because if you are surrounded, you can just do this Thunderclap and it damages the creatures that are in the area if they fail the con save, right? True Strike, ignore this one. There are all kinds of videos that are covering why this is one of the worst, if not the worst cantrip in 5e. The fact of it just grants you advantage, but you're better off just trying to make 2 attack rolls on it is just not a great cantrip at all. Don't pick this one up. I'm sure there are millions of Bard turns that were nothing but Bardic Inspiration and then Vicious Mockery. This is a very, very fun cantrip. This is just basically like Insult the cantrip. You're going to deal psychic damage, which is a fairly uncommonly resisted damage type, and then the creature has disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. It's a nice cantrip. I will say, though, ever since Tasha's called it of everything, if you compare this one over to Mind Sliver, this one feels like it's kind of underwhelming. With the Bard, there's a way for you to go grab that, and not just in the class with like magical secrets, but also for you to go over and get it with potentially a feat or just by multi-classing over into another class for 1 level. Some first level spells I'm going to make mention of here real quick. I really actually like Bane quite a bit. Charm Person, Cure Wounds, Comprehend Languages is all right. Detect Magic, Disguise Self, Dissonant Whispers, Fairy Fire is... I have a hard time not picking this up on any spellcaster I play that gets access to this. I adore this spell. Healing Word, mechanically, this is going to use up your bonus action, so you can't use this on the same turn that you're using Bardic Inspiration, but there are some instances in which this just comes in absolutely clutch. I know that some DMs even discussed potentially banning Healing Word because of just how hard it is to kill a party that has a character that has this spell right here. You're kind of saving up Healing Word to do this whenever someone is making death saving throws. This is a way that at range, you can just get them immediately up. This is an amazingly powerful spell. Don't sleep on this one. From Healing Word, sure, yeah, Featherfall is nice security. Hideous Laughter is a pretty fun debuff in there. Illusory Script, there's a lot of roleplay shenanigans you can get up to with this one. Longstrider, movement speed buff. Okay, Silvery Barbs. The things I will say about this one, this is a very unhealthy spell in the game. If you're looking for what is like probably the most powerful spell that you can get out of a Bard here at first level, it's impossible to shy away from Silvery Barbs. Don't be surprised though if you're playing at a table because of the internet's reaction to this spell, if this one is actually banned. The overall mechanic for what this is actually doing is way too strong for a first level spell. People have suggested moving this one actually up to second, if not third level. Don't be surprised if you're trying to roll up a bard and your DM just says, I'm not really okay with this spell being in the game. I will mention this one, though, that if the DM is allowing for it, this is one that you cannot ignore. After Silvery Barbs, though, Sleep, this one does tend to scale pretty poorly whenever you upcast it, so it's not as effective in the second tier play, but like here at the first tier play, you're going to find a whole lot of love for this spell. Thunderwave is another one to mention, and Unseen Servant. These are all pretty okay pickups. I just won't go through the entire spell as we're doing this video. As I said right here, Charisma is your spellcasting ability for your bard spells. And then for ritual casting, I always thought this was a kind of a bizarre thing for the bard to get. I'm not actually entirely sure maybe why. I think if they had leaned a bit more into the historian sort of like lore keeper bard, then this would make 100% sense. But like, it's just kind of a design thing for me where I'm like, I'm not sure really why bard gets ritual casting, but it's here. And then you can use a musical instrument, as I stated earlier, as a spellcasting focus for your bard spells. Now, it's worth noting here, there's some features that come into play with some of the subclasses. Well, one subclass in particular, that this rule really actually does make a difference here. You can only use a spellcasting focus if the spell requires a material component, which it's a mechanic to kind of keep in mind. We've called this out with Spirit's Bard. Spirit's Bard has an issue where, in particular, with their spiritual focus, they get a feature here at 6th level. And this is me kind of calling out a piece of a little bit of broken tech in the game, where if you're using a spiritual focus that you get here, which is your spellcasting focus, to cast a bard spell, you can add 1 damage or healing roll to the... Essentially, we figured this out, just a heads up. This doesn't really work the way that WotC intended it to, but this is one instance where the rules for using a spellcasting focus kind of came into play. Moving on from their spellcasting, we're going to get into Bardic Inspiration. This is your core bonus action, and this is a little bit floaty, actually. I said in the Barbarian video, there's either bonus actions are going to be setup or follow-up. Bardic Inspiration is one that you can use in either way, really. I guess you can use Rage in either way as well, but it's most effective as a setup, right? So your Bardic Inspiration, you can inspire others through stirring words or music. To do so, you use a bonus action on your turn to choose one creature other than yourself, you got to keep that in mind, within 60 feet of you who can hear you. That creature gains 1 Bardic Inspiration die, a d6. Once within the next 10 minutes, the creature can roll the die and add the number rolled to one ability check, attack roll, or saving throw it makes. The creature can wait until after it rolls a d20 before deciding to use the Bardic Inspiration die, but must decide before the DM says whether the roll succeeds or fails. Once the Bardic Inspiration die is rolled, it is lost. A creature can have only 1 Bardic Inspiration die at a time. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your Charisma modifier, and you regain any expended uses when you finish a long rest. Your Bardic Inspiration die changes when you reach certain levels in this class. This die becomes a d8 at 5th level, a d10 at 10th level, and a d12 at 15th level. What Bardic Inspiration is actually doing right here, this is a really strong feature. This Bardic Inspiration die that you're giving out is actually mathematically a little bit better than you giving them proficiency, and if they do have proficiency, it adds on top of that. What I mean by that, your Bardic Inspiration die is a d6. Right now, its average roll is going to be a 3.5. Them having Bardic Inspiration is better than the proficiency, mathematically, right here at the 1st level. Up at 5th level, it's a 4.5 all of a sudden. It's a little bit better than this +3. And it stays better, you're going to get a 5.5, right? Bardic Inspiration at this point, at 15th level, becomes a little bit better than proficiency, except in the case of like if they've got expertise in it and they're adding double their proficiency bonus or whatever. Now, this is something that does stack, like I said, on top of proficiency, so it's not like you're wasting it or anything like that. It's just kind of a cool thing to point out the strength of what this feature can do. And I know it's kind of restricted in uses here at 1st level. We're most likely expecting that you're going to use this maybe 3 times. But as you level up, you're going to get more uses of it. And eventually, it'll come back to you on a shorter long rest. What I kind of value as essentially, if you're getting the optimal rests, you're getting 3 to 5 uses of it per combat encounter. And again, that's considering optimal resting there. All right, so moving on from 1st level, we have your 2nd level Jack of all trades. You can add half your proficiency bonus rounded down to any ability check you make that doesn't already include your proficiency bonus. This right here actually has some hidden interactions that aren't really apparent just from reading the feat right here, right? The fact that it's any ability check means that there are certain spells that this works with. So counter spell, just keep that in mind as you're making your spell selections for like magical secrets. Song of Rest is one that I feel like people just forget is really in the Bard kit. Starting here at 2nd level, you can use soothing music or oration to help revitalize your wounded allies during a short rest. If you or any friendly creatures who hear your performance regain hit points at the end of the short rest by spending 1 or more hit dice, each of those creatures regains an extra 1d6 hit points. The extra hit points increase when you gain certain levels in this class. I kind of personally wish that it would have just scaled the same way as Bardic Inspiration did, but it's a separate thing you gotta track. Now, just note, if the creature isn't spending hit dice, they don't get these extra hit points, so it's kind of meh. I think that Wizards actually felt that people weren't really liking that feature a whole lot, so this is why they give you an optional 2nd level feature through Tasha's Cauldron of Everything called Magical Inspiration. If a creature has a Bardic Inspiration die from you and casts a spell that restores hit points or deals damage, the creature can roll that die and choose a target affected by the spell. Add the number rolled as a bonus to the hit points regained or the damage dealt. The Bardic Inspiration die is then lost. I think that this is actually a bit more impactful whenever they are casting a spell that restores hit points. The dealing damage is alright, but I just personally think that this only affecting one target, it feels like the overall impact in the story and to what all's happening is just going to be way better for restoring hit points. Now, also note that this isn't a thing that you can do with the spells you cast. This is only through other people. So make sure that you're dishing out that Bardic Inspiration, because if they aren't finding a use for it during their turn, maybe it's just going to be the kind of thing that after combat, they can blow on a restoration spell. Here at 3rd level, you're getting your subclass, which is going to get you features at 6th and 14th level after this, and you're getting expertise. So you choose 2 of your skill proficiencies. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses either of the chosen proficiencies. So these are skill proficiencies, not a skill and a tool proficiency, which Rogue is getting that and Artificer gets that, but expertise is real strength in here. It's synergizing with the fact that you are a charisma caster, is that this is the way that you can become basically the ultimate party face. So while Wizards of the Coast isn't directly saying this here in this feature, it is really pushing you towards one of the charisma abilities that you picked up. Moving on from there, you get your standard ability score improvement, and then at 5th level, you regain all expended uses of your Bardic Inspiration when you finish a short or long rest. This is where I think that Bard gets a massive, massive power spike because of how strong I think Bardic Inspiration actually is. You're no longer really worried about conserving these uses basically at all. While you're in combat, Bardic Inspiration should basically be your default bonus action. Beyond 5th level, they do get Countercharm. Here at 6th level, you gain the ability to use musical notes or words of power to disrupt mind-influencing effects. As an action, you can start a performance that lasts until the end of your next turn. During that time, you and any friendly creatures within 30 feet of you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. A creature must be able to hear you to gain this benefit. The performance ends early if you're incapacitated or silenced, or if you voluntarily end it, no action required. So, why has this one not necessarily felt all that great? Number one, this one's already kind of niche. Getting advantage on these saving throws, not every creature is inflicting these, but it is a fairly common condition to keep coming up. But you're having to use your action to do this, which, I think for most people, the overall perceived value that you're getting out of this is just kind of nothing. Your action can be used in a lot better ways in combat than to just try to, keep up this performance to get them advantage on these 2 conditions, right? You go up against a dragon and you're dealing with its frightening presence, then maybe this is the kind of thing that it's going to come into play fairly often. But other than that, it is a pretty, whenever I say pretty niche, it's just going to feel like an action that you got in the back burner. And then I guess when the situation comes up, this is here. But it's also really focusing on your position, and Countercharm is just a little bit fiddly. Now, also keep in mind, as we're progressing, Bardic Inspiration and Song of Rest are going to keep going up, and we're going to get higher level spell slots, all right? So you're at 10th level. This is a huge, huge level for Bard. You're going to get your expertise, which is just another form of expertise, you know, magical secrets. This is such a huge, huge moment here. You have plundered magical knowledge from a wide spectrum of disciplines. Choose 2 spells from any classes, including this one. A spell you choose must be of a level you can cast, as shown on the Bard table, or a cantrip. The chosen spells count as Bard spells for you, and are included in the number of spells known column for the Bard table. You learn 2 additional spells from any classes at 14th level and again at 18th level. So in terms of what spells I think that you should be focusing on picking up, I think that if a spell is appearing on the Bard spell list, it's one that you should just kind of ignore unless you're really, really hungry for it, I guess. There are so many other spells that this is going to apply to that, like, boy, you just do not need to ignore. There was a tier list that I actually found that had quite a few of the most popular spells in the game on it. So I'll make mention of a few that are in here that I think are ordered in terms of what are the ones that you should not be picking up. If you waste it, you're wasting a pick on this if it already appears on the Bard spell list. These are ones that they don't appear on the Bard spell list, but I just don't really think that they're great pickups for this feature. Decent. These are ones that maybe for a particular build, these are going to be somewhat of a defining piece of your kit. Great. These are generally going to be great pickups on any Bard. Supreme, we just know that these spells are basically de facto pickups with this feature right here. Let me start just from the very top. Counterspell. The fact that this wasn't already on the Bard spell list means that this is essentially a must pickup here. Eldritch Blast. I'm of the opinion that the Warlock spells do not need to be appearing on magical secrets. This spell in particular, this is the strongest damaging cantrip in the game. Strongest and most reliable. There are not... I won't say that there are a ton of ways or a ton of synergies with this within the Bard, but it's worth mentioning that just having Eldritch Blast dealing the force damage it deals, this is always going to be a very, very reliable source of damage right here. Shield is already a great spell to pick up at first level. It gets to be even better later on whenever you're not really... I mean, basically spell slots for full casters earlier on, if they have access to Shield, those are just Shield slots. Shield is an amazing reaction for you to get. If you've got Silvery Barbs and Shield, it's going to be insanely hard to take you down as a Bard. Spiritual Weapon. This one can fit a little bit clunky into the Bard kit, but if you're not really worried about Bardic Inspiration, let's say you dished it out before combat, right? You got that kind of level of prep. This is an amazing bonus action for you to get. And then Wish. I mean, come on, it's Wish. Yeah. I just realized as I went a little further, there's another spell that I think deserves to be up here in Supreme, but wasn't on the original tier list, and that's going to be Armor of Agathis, because of the way that can interact with Swords and Valor Bard. Picking up Armor of Agathis on a full caster, that spell is pretty terrifying. It's the kind of spell that I think you casting it on yourself as a Bard, if you go Valor or Swords, you might be breaking down some of the combat math in the game, and combats where it's just a melee opponent. Boy, don't sleep on Armor of Agathis. That is a scary spell. All right, so after 10th level Magical Secrets, you're also going to get one at 14th level where you get to pick more spells. 18th level, you get to pick more spells. This is basically Wish spell level right here. And then your capstone is Superior Inspiration. When you roll initiative and have no uses of Bardic Inspiration left, you regain 1 use. I don't actually think that this is a fantastic capstone here. I'll agree with what seems to be the wider opinion of the internet. I won't make an argument in favor of Superior Inspiration. If your table is using multi-classing rules, maybe 19th and 20th level, if not earlier, you should have dipped out for something else. I may do a video in the future talking about some fixes I've seen for Superior Inspiration, but I'll kind of scroll through now and give my general opinion of some of the subclasses, a quick overview of their intended combat role. Starting out number 1 with College of Creation, this leans a bit more into the support kind of a mindset that a Bard is trying to evoke, just sort of strengthening what the class is already giving you. However, you do have the ability for some high utility shenanigans right here with the Performance of Creation, and then the animating performance is allowing you to just basically make a larger, smaller construct that's out there on the battlefield with you. So you actually have a quite bigger area of threat because of this thing right here. And then at 14th level, they have probably my favorite capstone of any of the bards, this Creative Crescendo. The item that you're making up here at 3rd level does have some limitations in regards to its size and then its gold piece value. And then down here at 14th level, you are no longer limited by gold pieces whenever you're making items with that thing. So what this actually means is you can use this to make the material components for any spell. This is absurd. This is such a good capstone for the bard. If you're playing some of the other bards, you might want to consider multi-classing because of, XYZ reason. College of Creation is one of the only bard colleges I feel just like knocks it out of the park at every single level. This is such a good one to pick up. College of Elloquence is a debuffer, but don't be surprised if your DM does have this one banned at their tables. College of Elloquence is just operating a bit too strong for a bard college. It's also quite bloated with its loadout. I've got my own fixes. I've discussed about this subclass right here, but just in general, unsettling words. If you're allowed to take this at the table, boy, this is the best debuffing thing that you can possibly do with your Bardic Inspiration. Silver Tongue is giving you a flat skill floor of just you can't roll lower than a 10 whenever you're making a persuasion or deception check. Like, Unfailing Inspiration is actually a feature I think is so good. This should be on every single bard, maybe potentially swapping out with Countercharm. It's one of the things I recommended in my overhaul of 5e. But just in general, this is a very, very strong debuffer right here, and more of a social manipulator more so than just like a social star. Glamour, you want to play a Popstar? This is basically the way that you do it right here. College of Glamour has 2 incredibly strong 3rd level features. Mantle of Inspiration is you being able to dish out these temporary hit points, and then the creature that has the temporary hit points can immediately use its reaction to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Boy, this is a remarkably strong positioning tool, if not the best positioning tool out of any bard. Lore, this is the Bardic Bard. I want to take all the bard features and just emphasize that times 10. College of Lore is, in my opinion, one of the strongest subclasses in the entire game because we talked about magical secrets earlier. You're getting it earlier. You're getting additional skill proficiencies here at 3rd level. Like it's 3 additional skills of your choice. If you want to be the skill monkey even further, here you go. Cutting Words is giving you a unique reaction right here to be able to actually use your Bardic Inspiration to subtract from an attack roll, ability check, or damage. Oh man. And here, Peerless Skill, their capstone. When you make an ability check, you can expend 1 use of Bardic Inspiration. A D10 right now, it's going to go up to a D12 next level. Roll a Bardic Inspiration die and add the number rolled to your ability check. You can choose to do so after you roll the die for the ability check, but before the DM tells you whether you succeeded or failed. This works with Counterspell, because Counterspell is calling for an ability check as a part of the spell. You can add Bardic Inspiration to the attempted Counterspell. This is insane. This is such a strong feature right here. Do not sleep on Peerless Skill. College of Lore is definitely an S tier bard. College of Spirits appeared in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I covered that one here on the channel. This one's got some hiccups that occurred in the design phase. Go check that one out over, again, I'll post that video link up over here. I won't get terribly too into this one because it requires quite a lot of explanation into the features, but I do like this idea of what it has in this Spirit session. There's an alternative kind of a magical secrets you can get with this. It's kind of cool. The execution of the subclass is just kind of underwhelming, though. College of Swords, if you want to go with a Gish Bard, boy, this is such an incredible way to do this. What a cool use for their Bardic Inspiration here with their Blade Flourish. You can use this Bardic Inspiration whenever you're doing attacks to cause other effects to occur with them. You're going to feel like you've got a bit of that Battle Master flair happening in here. This is one of the only ways that you can get extra attack as a Bard. Now, this is one that I do think, if this were designed today, this would most likely allow you to cast a cantrip in place of one of these attacks or something, but yeah. And then Master's Flourish, eventually you don't have to expend Bardic Inspiration in order for you to do your Blade Flourishes. So, pretty fantastic Gish option right there. College of Valor is more of a war song sort of war herald rather than I'm going to go in there and be the one like specifically making the attacks. This one does feel like it got a bit outclassed by swords, but it is a bit more of a traditional bard. I can't help but just adore the elegance that they got with it, with simple 4 features that actually fit here on one screen. And then I come up and look at spirits and it's like, oh god, okay, all right, yeah. This is a very, very elegant, graceful design. I love quite a bit of what they did with Valor, but I think that people are going to value swords a bit higher at trying to do similar concepts. So we have our 2 Gishes, and then I think that Whispers may be somewhat of a third. You are basically getting some quasi-rogue-like features in here. You get what is effectively sneak attack in quotation marks, you know? You're having to use Bardic Inspiration in order to do that, but like, that's quite a bit more reliable than having to hope that you have advantage coming up on your turn, you know? So it depends on the flavor. I think that this one is kind of a natural fit to go multi-class over into Rogue, and then you have that direct synergy of Bardic Inspiration on top of everything with sneak attack. So, you know, I personally feel that College of Whispers is like, it doesn't feel like the playstyle was completely fleshed out with this one. They don't have a disengagement tool anywhere in their kit. But, I mean, I guess if you go over into Rogue, then, you know, you're going to get cunning action and, yeah. But anyways, so that's Bard. Let me know what you all think down in the comment section below. If you like these guides, give this a like. It really helps me to know that this is the kind of content you guys want out of me. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon sponsors. Thank you all so much for helping keep the lights on around here and coffee in my blood. Y'all are absolute heroes. And hey, if you like this video, why not subscribe? I've got more guides coming up. So yeah, and also go check out some of my live streams. I'm doing a lot of class design over there and it's a lot of fun. So anyways, guys, I've been Indestructible Boy. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you all are staying safe, staying healthy, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.